While the world was distracted by elections, conflicts, and economic crises, a silent bomb was exploding within China. With little media coverage, no dramatic announcement, and no very clear explanation, the rumor is that one of the most powerful men in China, who was being investigated for allegedly helping the United States, was arrested. The second most powerful man in the Chinese military simply disappeared. This is Jiang Yuxuan, with a 58-year career, a childhood friend of Xi Jinping, who was being investigated and now seems to have been detained. Today, we will talk about the most dangerous case in Chinese politics since 1971, about who this general is that Xi Jinping apparently arrested, about all the versions of what happened that day, and about how China tends to hide very important information from the rest of the world. This is quite a complicated case, and you should listen to me carefully because this could indeed affect our lives very soon. Let's start with the basics here. Who is this guy? Why is he called one of China's princes? And how powerful was he? Jiang Yuxi wasn't just any general. We're talking about someone with nearly 60 years of military career. He literally dedicated his entire life to the Chinese army. He is the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, which is basically the highest command of China's armed forces. It's as if he was only less powerful than Xi Jinping. And here's something interesting. Jiang is a veteran of the 1979 Vietnam War. That's a very rare thing. Most Chinese generals today have never seen real combat. They've never been in a war. But Jiang, he was there. He knows what it's like to command troops in real conflict situations, and this gives him a lot of possibilities within the army. And another interesting point, Jiang is the son of a general from the revolutionary era. He is part of what they call the Second Red Generation, which are the children of the founders of the Communist Party. And do you know who he grew up with? Exactly, with Xi Jinping himself. The two lived in the same residential complex in Beijing when they were children. They were basically childhood friends. Think about this for a second. Xi Jinping ordered an investigation, and some sources even mention detention. So, the guy he has known since childhood, the guy who basically helped him rise to power, the guy who commanded the world's second-largest army. It's a very serious matter. To give you an idea of how scandalous this is in China, the last time someone of this level was arrested in China was in 1971. Lin Biao, the designated evil successor, disappeared while trying to flee the country after an alleged coup attempt. That was 55 years ago. 5 out of 7 members of the Central Military Commission have been purged in the last 3 years. The Chinese military leadership has practically disappeared, and now only 2 members remain. Xi Jinping and Jiang Shengming, a career political commissar with virtually no real combat experience. If you haven't understood the issue yet, you have the world's second-largest army, with 2 million active soldiers, a nuclear arsenal, extremely dangerous missiles, aircraft carriers, and the entire command has been reduced to a politician and a bureaucrat. This is not a normal situation anywhere in the world. It's very difficult to get information about China or what happens in the country, but there are 3 main versions circulating on the internet and even in some international and Chinese media. First version, the banquet trap. This version usually comes from Chinese commentators abroad. According to them, on January 19th, Xi Jinping invited Jiang for a private dinner in the Great Hall of the People. A dinner between brothers. He even invited his own brother to be present. Jiang showed up with his family and security detail. The security personnel were then directed to a room, and during the dinner, Xi allegedly called in his guards who entered and arrested Jiang and his family. This version is more like a movie scene, a complete betrayal. There is a second version, which involves an armed confrontation, where, according to reports, Jiang went to the Jin Hotel in western Beijing, accompanied by only 4 bodyguards. There, he was ambushed by more than 100 heavily armed agents. There were some exchanges of gunfire, but the unit that was loyal to him was overpowered by the police special forces, and in the end, Jiang ended up being arrested. There is yet a third version that talks about a failed coup attempt. This third version might be the most explosive of them all. According to some information, Military officials planned to arrest Xi Jinping on the night of January 18th. It would have been, in fact, a military coup, but the president was supposedly alerted beforehand and took countermeasures, turning the operation against the conspirators. In other words, in this version, it wasn't Xi who arrested Jiang. It was Jiang who tried to arrest Xi and failed. Which of these versions is the first? No one knows. We will probably never know, but just the fact that there are so many completely different versions already says a lot about the chaos that reigns in China's information. But let's assume here that the official government announcement is true, that Jiang was indeed under investigation. The question is why? And here we need to talk a bit about, according to reports from analysts, Jiang was against using military force to try to reunify Taiwan. He believed that the Chinese military was not prepared to face American forces, that an invasion would be a disaster, and he advocated stability, especially considering the Chinese economy that was struggling and China's isolation from other countries. Xi Jinping, on the other hand, has been speaking more and more openly about Taiwan, about using force if necessary, about being ready for an invasion by 2027, and having the second most powerful man in the army saying we're not ready completely undermines troop morale. A letter allegedly written by Zhang circulated online. In it, he cited major disagreements with Xi regarding the use of force against Taiwan, cooperation with Russia, and the rapid promotion of army officers without adequate experience. Zhang reportedly confronted Xi personally about these issues about a month before he was investigated. If that really happened, it's not hard to understand why the president acted. In fact, I later saw recent reports saying the Chinese government ended up accusing Zhang of leaking nuclear data and secrets to the United States. Quite curious that this happened, right? But anyway, amidst all this, obviously, there were many rumors and many videos that are hard to verify as true or not, or if they pertain to this specific moment. And for example, on January 27th, reports of shootings in Beijing began to emerge. And as much as I also find these stories of the army surrounding a city curious, which generally always happens when we are in a complicated political scenario, there is not much evidence that this really happened, but the videos circulated on the internet. People on Chinese social media posted videos of military convoys transporting what appeared to be missiles on highways. You also have videos of supposed residents of Guangdong reporting seeing fighter jets flying over cities there. There are also reports that in Beijing, the security in some regions was significantly intensified, reports of roads being closed, soldiers standing guard on highways, and knowing how much of this is true, or if it really happened. If it didn't happen, or if it happened on a much smaller scale, and people are exaggerating because of the geopolitical scenario, it's hard to know. There isn't much independent information to verify whether something is true or not. But the fact is that these stories are circulating, and a lot. And yes, I believe there is a significant element of propaganda from other countries against China here, obviously. But one thing that cannot be denied is that China has a very complicated history of hiding things, of obscuring information, and making it difficult to access information from the country. This is a pattern. It's not the first time China has tried to hide information. If we make a small timeline here to remember some events, you will see, for example, Lin Biao himself, in 1971. The successor simply disappears while trying to flee the country after an alleged coup attempt. Yet to this day, no one knows exactly what happened. The official version has changed several times over time. He was never really identified or found. There are even some Soviet teams that investigated the case and denied it. Or like the example from '89 in Tiananmen Square. The Chinese government still doesn't really disclose the data about that day. Even the existence of this event is censored within China. An entire generation grew up practically unaware of what happened. Or the most recent case now, from 2019 to 2020, when we had that period where we needed to stay home. The first doctors who tried to warn about it were silenced. We've already talked a little about this in a previous video, in fact. Take a look there. The camps also in some regions in China, which they denied the existence of, called it all Western propaganda. until satellite images and leaked documents came to light, and they had to partially admit it. But they call it something else. And that's why we need to pay attention when things like this happen. Because even if half of it is exaggeration and mixed information, there are serious things happening in the midst of it. The greatest danger is not what we know, it's generally what we don't know. When you have a nuclear power, with the second largest economy in the world, with territorial ambitions over other places, and you don't have transparency about what's happening within the power structure, this is dangerous for everyone. We live in a very interconnected world. This concept of "it's their problem" no longer exists. Anyway, we will continue to follow this case. This is probably far from over. And there might be some very interesting developments in the upcoming chapters. Comment below what you think about all this. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. What do you think will happen from now on? Thank you very much for watching up to this point, and we'll see you in this other video that's appearing on your screen.